Hey guys, it's Ruth here from ruthej.com. Okay, listen, I want to switch up topics with you guys a little bit today. I had an experience yesterday in the grocery store and then read something in a book this morning that I was reading that kind of brought it all back and made me think about it, and I wanted to put it out there with you guys. Okay, so this is specifically around physical boundaries with our children. I have daughters, so I would assume this is the same for sons, but I'm going to speak specifically for little girls, okay? So yesterday, I was in the grocery store with my daughters. They're 6, and I took like one step away from them. One was in the trolley or in the shopping cart, and one was standing right next to it talking to her. And I took one step away from them and turned my back and was looking at a product on the aisle. And in that moment, 2 young men, probably mid-20s, walked up to my daughters. Okay, for some of you, this might be like way outside of your cultural context, so just understand cultural context. So just understand that this is not hectically abnormal here, okay? But these 2 young men, like mid-20s, were walking down the aisle. They stopped and they looked at my daughter and said, "Oh, hi, what's your name?" And and the girls are kind of like, "I'm Blake, I'm Kina." And I happened to turn around right then and see these men like smiling, looking at my daughters. Oh, and they're saying, "Oh, you're so cute. How old are you?" And I could see my daughters were a bit like, "I don't actually know you." Like I could see that they were uncomfortable. So I kind of turned around and I smiled and I stepped closer to them and I looked the men right in the eye and I smiled, but like a very strong, like, "Hey" smile. And they said, "We're 6 years old." And the men said, "Oh, oh, you're so cute." And they looked at me and said, "Oh, you're so blessed." And I said, "Thank you very much." And then I said, "Come, girls." And we turned and walked. And the men were still kind of like, "Oh, bye," afterwards. And when we were around the corner, okay, so wait. So that was that experience. And then this morning I was reading in a book, and it was talking about teaching our children about sex, and that if we are not intentional in teaching our children about their body, about what sex is, that it's a gift, all of our beliefs and views around sex and our body and that kind of a thing, if we're not intentional about filing opinions and values in that regard, they're going to be taught by their peers. And I feel like that's an obvious thing that we all know, but now that we're in the position of parenting, I've heard so many peers, as in parents, be like, "Oh, that's such a scary topic." And I just really feel like, as a parent, I want to say from one to another, like, put on your big girl panties, put on your big boy undies. Like, this is where we need to show up big time. This conversation is not about whether you're uncomfortable having it or not. It's about who do you want to educate your children. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to be the one that does that. And I want my children to be around other children whose parents have been intentional about that as well. Like, it's a healthy breeding ground that way. Okay. So, I don't at all don't hear what I'm not saying. Don't take that as condemnation. Okay. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you a few steps in terms of, how you can practically do that. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that I am a massive believer that teaching, our daughters, our children, especially our daughters, boundaries around, or teaching our children about healthy sex, actually stems at a very young age, from about 2, teaching them healthy boundaries with their body, and how they interact with others. Okay. So, to go back to the grocery store incident, when I got around the corner, with my girls and we were sort of out of earshot, I stopped the trolley and I said, "Girls, look at me." And they looked at me and I said, "Were you uncomfortable speaking with those men?" And they said, "A little bit. We didn't mind saying hello, but it was a bit awkward." And I actually had to stop and take a second and talk them through that. Okay, so we're going to get to that now. But this is actually this is the first thing that I want to say is be intentional from a very young age. Okay, so from when my daughters were 2 years old, we started telling them from 2, we started saying, "You must respect adults, but you do not have to touch anyone." Those are 2 different things. So we would say to them, You have to greet adults. That's how you show respect. So you have to look them in the eye. Sorry about that signal. You have to look them in the eye and say hello. Or you have to tip your face up and look at them and you can wave. Or if you feel comfortable, you can high five them. Or if you really love and care for them, you can give them a hug. And that is what we have always, always, always taught our children, okay? So our daughters, their affection is 100% on their terms. And we've actually gotten a lot of flack for that. And it sounds really funny, but we've gotten a lot of heat for that because in the cultural context that we are in, it is still very normal for elderly people, for strangers, for people of, because we're in a big melting pot here. There's a lot of strong cultures that live side by side together every day. And it is still very normal for people to feel like it's completely okay to walk up to my kids, especially when they were small, 2 years old, 3 years old, small, and walk up to them, or if they're in the trolley, they go and just say, oh, hello, and hug them and, nuzzle up to them. And I would actually step in. I would put a hand between them and my child and say, excuse me, please let go of my child. And if people are like, oh, they're just so cute, I would say, that's great, but you don't need to touch my child. You don't know them and they do not know you. So I wanted my children to get used to me hearing me draw a boundary. So not being rude, not being nasty, but basically just saying, hey, you wouldn't do this to some random adult. You cannot do it to my child. So they were unable to draw that boundary for themselves at 2 and 3. So I took it upon myself to do it for them. Okay, especially, I'm going to be completely honest here, especially at our church. I found a lot of little old ladies and a lot of old men, and especially a lot of youth, young adults. It was very weird. It was these gap ages would feel like they had, I don't know, free reign to use my daughters as little tank fillers. And they're like, oh, and they would run up and hug them. And I could see my daughters were like, oh, and they're like, come on, give me a hug. And I would step in again and say, actually, we have taught them that they do not have to hug anybody that they don't want to hug. Please let go of them. And some people would be like, oh, but I just want a hug. And I would say, I understand, but you're not going to get it from my daughter. She's a person and she doesn't feel comfortable hugging you. Simple. And some people were like, oh, and I would just say, and other people I would just say, actually, we've taught them that there's a difference between respect and hugs. And they, and I would look at my daughters and say, can you please greet Mrs. or, and they would look up and wave or say, hello, good morning. And I would say, that's respect. That's what we've taught them to do. And some people took that, and I would say probably about 50% of people would say, that's amazing. Oh, I love that you teach them that. And other people were a bit like, rah, rah. And honestly, I don't care because I wanted my daughters to know from a very young age that you can be respectful to people without giving them any type of physical touch at all, okay? I feel like it's much easier. I'm of the opinion that it is much easier to teach them to be very, very on their own terms now and learn to bring in a bit of compassion later than the other way around. Than letting it be a free-for-all now and trying to draw boundaries when they're older because the pattern's already set by then. So that's thing number one that I want to say is be very intentional about standing up for your child. And number two, be very intentional about modeling those boundaries for them, okay? So the second thing that we did, and this is the second thing that I want to say, is role play with your children. Role play. So from about 2.5, when these scenarios started coming up, we would say to them, so it's not enough to just say to them, oh, don't let strangers hug you. That's fine, but they don't know how to actually deal. They don't know what to say, okay? And that's where I feel like we often go wrong as parents, is that we say, oh, don't do drugs, don't be pressured into doing something, but we do not actually equip our children with what to do in those situations, okay? So from about 2.5, we started teaching our daughters that and we would literally role play with them, where we would be, oh, hi, honey, and we would come in for a hug. And if they were not comfortable, we taught them to stiff arm people. So they would literally put their hands out and go, hello, and keep their distance. And we would keep going with them and say, hey, why don't give me a hug? I hug, and we taught them to take a step back. So first was the stiff arm, and then they would take a step back and they would say, I'm not comfortable with a hug. And they would just wave. And we taught them to do it all with a smile on their face. And we have seen them do this with people over and over again. And I genuinely believe it is a result of the role playing. So back to the grocery store. Yesterday, when those men walked up to them, we went around the corner and I said to them, you know, were you uncomfortable? Yes, a little bit. And I said, what would you have wanted to say? They kind of thought about it and they actually just said to me, we don't know, Mommy. We don't know what to say when we're uncomfortable. And one of my daughters actually said to me, it was nice that he said that we were cute. And I feel like that's really important. I feel like that's something that we have to take note of for our next generation of women. Like, I think it's natural and it's normal to be flattered by attention. And this, I mean, my daughters are beautiful. I'm not just saying that because they're my daughters. Like, my daughters are genuinely really beautiful inside and out, and they draw attention everywhere they go. So every time they say to us, oh, someone said that I was beautiful, someone said that I looked nice, like, obviously any girl loves that. Anybody loves a compliment. And we just say to them, oh, baby, you are gorgeous, and you're going to get a lot of attention. You're going to get a lot of compliments your whole life. It's just one of many. And just trying to get them used to the fact that, like, this is not something that you need to draw on, because it's not like the first time you're ever going to compliment. We want them to get used to, like, there's going to be tons of these. Okay. So same thing yesterday when my daughter said, oh, he said we looked nice, and I enjoyed that. And I said, that's understandable. It's nice to have a compliment. And I can see why he complimented you. You guys are very beautiful, and that will be one of many. You will get lots and lots of compliments during your life, and you need to get used to it. Okay, because I find what happens, if I think back on my childhood and other girls that I knew growing up, sometimes compliments can feel so rare because of the space of life that we're in, that when someone gives us a compliment, we just like grab hold of it, even if it's an unhealthy situation. So maybe you think I'm being dramatic or not, but I want to pick up on those things from a young age and try and connect the dot, or I don't know what the word is, for my daughters, that you're going to get a lot of that. You don't need to drink so deeply from that one, because there's going to be so many. Like, just get used to it. It is who you are. So we talked about that, and then I said, listen, this is very similar to what we've talked about in the past. If strangers come up to you, you greet them, you look them in the eye, you say, hello, how are you today? If they get close to you and you are uncomfortable, what you need to say is, please take a step back. I'm uncomfortable with how close you are. And they both kind of looked at me. I said, now let's practice. And I actually physically moved into their space and was like, hi, you're so cute. What's your name? And they both stepped back and they said, my name is Kina. You're in my space. Please back up. And I had them like, and at first they were a bit shy and like, hi. And I said, no, like a gentle smile, but a straight face. Like, my name is Kina. Please back up. And had them practice using a bit of force in their voice, and by the end, both of them were saying it. And I asked them stuff like, oh, how old are you? And where do you live? And I had them practice saying, I'm not comfortable with telling you where I live. Have a nice day, and walking away. So again, you may think I'm being harsh or extreme, but I feel like it's much easier. And this, please note that I'm not just talking about men. It just happened to be men yesterday in the grocery store. Sometimes, like I said, this is little old ladies or well-meaning people. I understand they're well-meaning, but once again, I don't know them from a bar of soap, and neither do my children, and I'm not going to risk my most valuable possessions in the world on trying to be polite to someone that I do not know from a bar of soap. Sorry. So I guess I just want to recap now and just say, be intentional from a very young age, from the time that your children can talk. Be intentional in giving them words and actions to draw physical boundaries. And the second thing I want to say is role play, okay? That conversation that I had with my girls yesterday in the grocery store was honestly 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And it's something that we'll go back to at various points. But it's 2 minutes invested in my children's future. It's 2 minutes that they could reap the reward from for the rest of their lives. So as one parent to another, be intentional and role play. Equip your children with words and actions and how to actually conduct themselves in a situation. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful for you. Leave your comments in the comment box below. I would love to hear whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, whether you have other techniques that you use. But yeah, let me know how you feel and have an awesome day.